I started Python programming around 2010, and few years later, I completed my master's in scientific computing. In the past 6 years, I worked with various firms, juggling across roles like big data scientist and product manager, software developer. And but my core focus has always been like accelerating the data analytics pipeline so that clients can get their insights faster. And one such toolkit which I discovered in this process was Number. And today I'll be sharing my insights regarding Number. So let's move ahead. So we all know about Python, and we love Python because it is easy to learn. The codes are usable and readable. It has a powerful ecosystem of around 250,000 packages. And because you need to write only a fewer lines of code compared to traditional programming languages, the development cycles are comparatively shorter. And there are many more features of Python which we love. But But there is one thing which bothers us, that when we are running our codes during our research, or when we are doing some heavy computational exercises, something which bothers is that if learning Python is so easy, why is increasing the performance of my Python code so difficult? So at times we have to wait magnitudes longer compared to traditional programming languages. While we are running our codes, and this takes a lot of time. And basically these compute intensive algorithms are quite compute intensive, and we always feel that wish there was some way to make our code faster. And quite a lot of people have worked in this domain, a lot of companies have worked in this domain, and they have developed various packages and frameworks and different Python implementations also to tackle this whole entire performance issue. And this is what I'll call the 2 decades of Need for Speed timeline, where people have worked on different toolkits. So many of say I basically I set up a poll, and many of you are already familiar with some of the packages like PyPy, PyPy, and people are using Number, and also a lot of people are using Python. So many of you are familiar with it, but those who are not, these are some of the libraries which at some point of time existed, and basically, and 5 of them still continue ahead. And yeah. Okay. So understanding what is Number. Basically, to understand that, let's first look at the other implementations which are right now quite popular, like PyPy. So Number is not a replacement Python interpreter like PyPy. So it is not that, because and these replacement Python interpreters are basically very difficult to implement. They are difficult to maintain compatibility with the existing Python libraries that are there. And so this process is difficult. So a NumPy, the current version of NumPy will not work with the basically PyPy. So they have another NumPyPy for that. So this compatibility is there, issue is there. And also it is targeted towards CPUs, and there are it does not basically address non-CPU targets like GPUs. And also some of the popular basically translators which are basically Cython, Python, Nutka. So these are some of the popular translators which in which basically you write your codes in Python, and it translates to C++, and this which gives it the edge. So in these translators, some of the limitations are like the static analysis of the code. Major problem is that you have to do ahead of time compilation to, and that generated code might be under specialized. Basically it can have data types and capabilities which are missing, or they can be very bloated, they covering all the additional data types that are supported by suppose some function. Also, if you need to compile it on client's device, it requires C++ and C compiler at the end user system. So this is one of the major challenges with these translators. And basically, so Number is neither a replacement interpreter nor a translator. So what is it? It is basically an open source JIT compiler, basically, which translates a subset of Python and NumPy code into fast machine code. So its name is derived from NumPy and Mamba. Mambas are basically one of the fastest snakes on this planet, and it is a JIT compiler which translates the code to machine code. And how this works, and it is one of the easiest way of translating a code, compiling a code. And all you need to do is just add the JIT decorator. When you add that decorator, what happens is when you call that function, the Python function goes through a bytecode analysis, and then an number intermediate representation is generated. Now, based on the function arguments, the types are inferred, and this number IR is rewritten based on the data types that the user input. And this rewritten intermediate representation goes through a process of lowering. Basically, lowering is nothing but a conversion of a high level code of number IR to a low level machine specific code based on LLVM. So it lowers the code, and this LLVM IR goes through the LLVM JIT compiler or the NVIDIA version of it for the CUDA code. So it goes through that compiler system and gets converted to the machine code, which can be easily executed, or you can also cache it. So coming to the next part, which is basically this entire process that we just saw. It is not that this entire process is non-transparent and everything happens at the backend. It gives you a feature in which a user can override certain environment variables, and you can see each and every step which goes through. So you can see you can dump LLVM code, or you can also dump the number IR code, and you can also do some analysis at your end by dumping these codes. So you get all these environment variables. We'll cover some of these environment variables later. And to get started with, let's start with the first example, which is the Mandelbrot set. I'll fire up the Jupyter notebook for this purpose. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, we'll be generating Mandelbrot set. So what is Mandelbrot set? Basically, it is a compute intensive problem where you take a complex plane, and for each and every point on that complex plane, you try to perform an iteration until and unless it breaches a threshold, which in this case is an absolute value of 2. And once it breaches the threshold, according to the maximum iteration that point has reached, you assign it a color, and then you basically plot it on the graph, and you get a beautiful visualization of Mandelbrot. So let's do that. So what are we going to do is basically we'll be using the image library to display the Mandelbrot. We'll be importing the math library to use the math.cost function and log function, and we'll be using NumPy and Numba. So we have set up the width as 500, and based on the width, so basically it will be 500 cross 500 grid for which we'll be generating the Mandelbrot, and the maximum iteration we have set to 1024. So this is the function which generates the Mandelbrot set. And for this, basically, since if I am new to Python, I'll be using the data structure which is prevalent in Python, as I'm not familiar with NumPy. So I'll be using basically a list. So this is basically nothing but a list of tuples, where each tuple is basically RBG value. It is the red, blue, green value for that particular point on the complex plane. And I have a list of list. So this is a 500 cross 500 tuple. And then I'll iterate over each and every point on the complex plane, assign it a value which can be obtained using the complex function corresponding to that grid point. And then we'll be iterating until it breaches a max iteration. We'll be iterating until that point, and in case it breaches the threshold, we'll be assigning the appropriate pixel value. So let's execute this function. Okay, now we'll call this function to calculate the pixels, and this can be done by passing the width and max iteration parameter, which we have set as 500 and 1024. Okay, let me execute. Yeah, so the computation is happening at the backend. So yeah, so this is the part. So you can see the tuple color tuple assigned by me is using some complex some function. So this function basically calculates the RBG value, which is just for the purpose of demonstration, as in how this color template functions generate some beautiful color scheme. So yeah, it has executed. So it took around 8.77 seconds in my PC. So let me just view the Mandelbrot set. Yeah, so now you can see the Mandelbrot set which is being generated. So it took us around 8.7 seconds to generate just a 500 cross 500 Mandelbrot set. Now let's take the function and apply number over it, number jet over it. So we'll be applying ngJit decorator, which stands for JIT decorator with no Python equal to true. So what it does is basically it compiles the decorated function to run without the involvement of a Python interpreter. So it translates everything to the machine code. And this is basically the recommended and best practice way to use the number decorator, and leads to best performance. So we took the same function, we applied ngJit over it. Now let's execute the function. It took around 1.19 second. Now let us execute it once again. So it took around 300 milliseconds. So as you can see, the timing of the second execution was less, because when we executed it for the first time, it's called a lazy compilation. So it communicates the data types, type inferencing for the parameters are happening. So it infers the data type and then compiles the machine code, which takes delta time, and that's why the first execution is a bit longer. But once you execute it for the first time, if you're using the same data types for the input parameters, it will get executed easily, and you can see that it leads to lesser time. So you can see it is around 300 millisecond, and this is approximately 30 times faster than the pure code. So you can see all I need to do was just add a numberJIT decorator, and I got that performance. Now, another good part about Numba is basically ngJIT also has the parallel flag. So what happens is basically it will convert your machine code, and based on the number of cores you have on your computer, it will automatically generate a code which executes in parallel. And you can do that, and it does it automatically for a few of the NumPy functions and methods. But for pure Python, if you have a for loop in which basically you know that a for loop can be executed independently, you just use the number.prange function, and this makes the loop parallel, and it can be executed in parallel. So you can just execute. I just added nb.prange, which stands for number.prange, for the first loop, because I don't want to do excessive parallelization. So I just added a number.prange, and you can see it took around 90 milliseconds. So you can see how my code for just a single loop, single core was taking around 300 millisecond, and now it's taking a 90 millisecond, which is one third faster. And we can just plot it and check it once that, yeah, everything is generated perfectly fine. You can check out the number of threads using number.config number num threads. So in my PC, there are around 16 threads. So it is using these many threads for this computation. I can also set the threads for a particular computation. So if I just do a single thread computation, it takes the same amount of time which we took for just pure ngJIT, and I can slowly increase that time by using higher threads. We can reduce the time. So you can see how for 8 threads it's taking around 125, and for 16 it takes much lesser. So you can see how easily we can also parallelize our code using Numba. And we can also print the diagnostics and see what is happening at the backend. So there is only one reason for this parallel execution right now, which is the p range. You can see it's annotated as 0. And this is a parallel for loop which Numba has identified, and it is executing in parallel. So there are certain other parameters like fast math, uh, which will basically relax the compliance, IEEE 754 compliance, and give you an additional performance. Also, in case you want to run your codes across sessions, the initial compilation time, you can avoid it by caching it. So if you turn cache equal to true, it will save the compiled version when you execute it only for the first time, and then in successive sessions you can easily run that code without that additional overhead of the first compilation. And also Numba has an ahead of time compilation, which is similar to the Python to C translators. So we'll not be covering that today because it is similar to Cython and Python. So let's go to the next exercise, which is same number Mandelbrot set, but using NumPy. So in case you are currently doing scientific computing and data science, you are already using NumPy and you are quite familiar with it. So for the same problem, we can use the NumPy array as a grid point. So we can have the NumPy 2D array and 3D array in this case, because the uh, first is axis is the width, another axis is the height, and the third axis is basically the pixel values, RBG. So we take a NumPy 3D array, and we now as if I just want to run it for the first time. I'm not that familiar with NumPy. What I will do, I'll just use NumPy for the storage and access purposes. So it will just be a NumPy array, and I'll be using the for loops instead of NumPy vectorizations for access. And I'll be using the for loops. Then I'll be using performing the same calculations. Then using slice will be assigning the calculated values as the NumPy array. And once we execute this code, let me execute it. It takes some time. So here we are using two for loops, nested for loops, then another for loop for maximum iteration. So yeah, it took around 8.93 seconds, as you can see, which is even greater than the pure Python version, in which we used a list of tuples. So this is even more expensive. So if we use NumPy array, but we are using the same programming construct as the as the pure Python version, then we are getting a lot more overhead, which yeah, we are generating the same Mandelbrot, which we can avoid if we just use the NumberJit decorator. So in the same function, if we add a NumberJit decorator, it automatically understands the internal structure of the code, and then it uses the efficiency of the NumPy array, and basically now we get 291 ms, which is even less. So you can see this is faster than the Python version. I'll be sharing the whole stats later. So this is faster than the pure Python version. So using NumPy array, we can get faster performance if we do an ngit, and we can just check out the Mandelbrot. Yeah, it's the same. Now, now we can turn on the parallel component. So the thing is that NumPy is primarily designed for single core machines, and except barring a few functions like dot product, which computes in uses the all the cores. Other functions are purely designed to be as fast as possible for single core machine, but these functions are scalable across threads. So what Number automatically does, it compiles a version of this code to run in parallel in various threads. So all the element wise, point wise array operations, all the reductions, array math functions, and basically arrays assignment, which includes slicing, these Number identifies them and makes them run in parallel. So this is one of the quite interesting feature of Number. And I added the parallel equal to true flag, and I set the number of threads at 16. Yeah, and I got a tremendous increase in performance. So now I'm getting it much faster than the parallel version of the pure Python. So this enhances the performance of computations performed on the NumPy arrays. And we can just check it once. Yeah, it's the same Mandelbrot we are generating. Now, for scientific computing purposes, people who are already familiar with NumPy, they can also write universal functions, which in NumPy you have to write it in C, C++. You have to write and then execute it, compile it, and then execute it. So you can write these ufuncs and the gufunc generalized universal functions in Python. So that is one of the major advantages. And using the number decorator, which is vectorize and geovectorize, you can basically compile it into a ufunc, which you can execute it in parallel. So this is one of the major advantages. If you are coming from NumPy background and you want to write Python codes and uh, Python codes for specific functions and compile it into a ufunc, which can be operated element wise or over an array and return the results back again in NumPy. So you can use the number vectorize and geovectorize decorators for it. So and as I previously said, number has a subset of Python and NumPy code. So for example, this np.mesh numpy mesh create function was missing. So I had to implement my own version of 2D creating a 2D mesh. So you have to keep that in mind. In Number, it is documented what are the functions that are supported. So since I don't have mesh create, I had to write my own code. And you can see it. This code gives me the same functionality as mesh grid. And using the vectorized decorator, I can supply, first I need to supply the spec. Spec is basically the data types of the inputs, which is X, Y, W, and max iter. So these are the data types for the input, which is integer, and the return value of the scalar, which is also an integer. So the I is a scalar is also an integer. So vectorized functions generates a ufunc, which operates on a scalar and returns a scalar. So basically you need, it operates on each element of a 1D or 2D array. So we can also say, we need to set the target as no Python true for performance, and the target can be set as parallel so that it knows that, okay, this function can be executed in parallel on the NumPy array. And also you can initialize a geovectorize to get the colors. So here I am calculating a color, and since the color is an RBG array, so I cannot use this same vectorize function because it returns a scalar. So I need to use a generalized universal function, and so I need to use a geovectorize. And this geovectorize has a slightly different signature, in which you need to this denotes an array of integer, and this 2D array, this denotes a 1D array and a 3D array for color, which is also the output. So in this, there is no return parameter, and you set the output in the colors itself. And you need to specify the layout, which is similar, which is as given by the NumPy specification. You need to specify the layout, which includes the dimension for each of this array, and again no Python mode, and you can also set the target as parallel. So we execute this part. And now this is the Mandelbrot calculation only using ufuncs. So you can see how I have created a mesh. Then using the get iter ufunc, I can operate it on these NumPy arrays and specify the width and max iteration, and get the NumPy array back as iterations. And now on this iters NumPy array, I'll be supplying a geofunc, and basically I get the pixel RBG value of each and every pixel. So let's execute this and set the thread as 16. Yeah, you can see that the runtime is a bit higher than what we got initially, because I've changed the logic of the code a little bit to show you how vectorize and geovectorize can be used. And now we can get the array. Yeah, so we get the same result. So you can see that using number, you can easily generate ufuncs, which can be seamlessly integrated in your NumPy codes. And let's move on to the next segment, which is diffusion heat transfer. So this is the last segment. So what are we doing is basically we are calculating the heat transfer equation and solving it for both time and space. And these are the equations in which we do a central difference on space and a forward difference in time. And we have certain diffusion criteria, parameter initial conditions and boundary conditions, like the grid size and basically the number of grid points, and what is the temperature. So in this problem, basically we are applying a hot temperature of around 700 Kelvin on all the boundaries, and the basically the steel the steel is of 300 Kelvin initially, and with time basically it will get heated up. So we'll be using number and see how this scientific computing problem can be solved. So let's go to the notebook. Yeah. So we can see this is the initialization that I just showed, and uh, there are around 100 cross 100 grid points. We calculate some parameters for calculations, and there are the number of steps in time that we are going to take is around 501. So let's set up this initializations, and let's this is the initialization function that we'll be using to initialize the grid points for the hot temperature across all the four walls. So we'll be using this function. Now this is the function which uses the numpy for loops and the basically on a numpy array. So we have a time step numpy function which accepts the current temperature uh, of the entire grid, creates a copy, because these calculations will mess up the calculations if we don't create a copy, and calculate the corresponding new thermal gradient, and set up the new temperature for each and every grid points. So we do this, and this calc ht, basically this function just takes the initial temperature of the entire grid and the number of steps that will be following, which we have set as 501. So let's initialize the initial temperature. So it's now 300 for all other points, and for all the boundary points it's 700. We calculate the heat transfer, and let's see what results we get. So basically, yeah, it will take some time to execute while we can go back. So you can see this uxx represents the calculation along the x-axis, and this uyy represents along the y-axis. And this is basically dt stands for the delta time, and this is the thermal diffusivity d, and we calculate the new temperature of the grid point. So yeah, the computation is over, and it's around 15 seconds. You can see it took a lot of time for computing this problem, and let's plot it. Okay, so this is for u equal to 51, which is the mid. If we draw a line in the middle and plot it, this will be the temperature gradient of the midpoint. So yeah, midline. So you can see this is the thermal. So the walls are at 700, the center is still at 300, and there's a gradient. Now, if you are familiar with NumPy, you can eliminate all these for loops and copying this uh, initial condition, and you can directly use the vectorization, NumPy vectorization and vector operators. You can directly use and calculate the same thermal gradient. And see if we do it using pure NumPy. So you can see it took around just around 63 milliseconds, which is much less than what we attained earlier. So you can see how using NumPy vectorization solved a problem, but it leads to this notation which is not that intuitive, and you need to basically write it down and dig it deeper to see what actually is happening. And the code is not that simple for this vector notation. So let's see how Numba performs if we inject this vectorization. So just adding a NumbaJet on this time step calculation and the function for a heat transfer. Let's do an inject and check out our results. So it took around 67 seconds. So at times it is approximately same as what we got using pure NumPy vectorization, and at times it is even faster. So this result can vary, and but it is approximately same. So we can see we are hardly getting that much performance gain when you are using NumbaJet on basically this vectorized NumPy, because what it is doing, it is still using the NumPy vectorization, and it is overloading that NumPy functions, and so it is not generating that optimized code. So let's see what Numba offers. So it offers a stencil decorator. So what is a stencil decorator? Basically, stencils are common computational pattern in which the array elements are updated according to some fixed pattern. So in this, we saw there is a 3 by 3 grid, which is getting updated, and we can call it as a stencil kernel. It allows clearer and more concise code. And also you can create parallel codes, parallel stencils for execution, and it also automatically generates the looping code. You don't need to write a for loop, nested for loop, to evaluate this stencil. So you can see how simple this stencil is. So you define a kernel, and you supply a cval, which is t-hot. So what happens is basically, if you don't supply this cval, it will not evaluate the boundary points which is at T-hot temperature, because in the initial array, if we apply this stencil, it will give out of bounds error due to index. And that's why we are applying we can supply that boundary output for the final output using cval. So we are supplying it as T-hot, which is the boundary condition. And we have written it in pure scientific form, which is how you actually write the equation in the textbooks, and just return the value. And now we just execute this same diffusion kernel. Yeah, now you saw that it is 19 millisecond, which is more than one third, which is more than 3 times faster. You can see how this stencil decorator simplifies your code and also makes it faster. So this is one of the very this is one of the new uh, functionality of Numba, and it is quite helpful when you're doing scientific computing. You can focus more on the notations and also gain that performance. And you can plot the value, it is same. And the neighborhood of that kernel, basically the grid points, you can see, check out, it is -1 1 and -1 1. So this shows the bound of variation in that 2D array for the grid points. So index from I, if you supply an array element at j, it will be varying from i-1 to i+1 and j-1 to j+1. So coming back to the presentation. So when is Numba a good idea? So it is useful for numerical algorithms which are array oriented, math heavy. They have a lot of for loops. When the data is in form of NumPy arrays, there are flat data buffer. When the performance bottleneck is a handful of well encapsulated functions. So Numba easily plugs in into your pipeline. So just encapsulate the part which has a performance bottleneck in an ngit decorator, and you'll gain that performance. You can create universal functions for NumPy using Python codes, one of the major advantages, instead of writing C codes. And you can easily parallelize your code, which targets both multi-core CPUs and also GPUs. So Numba also has a CUDA JIT decorator, which will compile your code for targeted towards the GPUs. And it can create fast and clean codes for scientific computing using stencil kernels. So these are some of the advantages when you should be using Numba. And with this, we come to an end of this session. And if you want to ask questions, now is the time. And we can also take it up on Twitter, and you can find the slides and codes on my website, which is realworldpython.guide.
Thank you so much, Ankit. If anyone has any questions, please, I can see the session Q&A, and I think you can also unmute yourselves right now. So feel free to either unmute yourself and ask questions or just type them in the chat or the session Q&A, and I should be able to see them. And as Ankit said, you can obviously just ping him, or you can also write to him on Twitter. But let's see if anyone has anything. So I can just quickly go through. We have just two comments, not really questions. One said, "Welcome, Ankit, when you joined in." And then someone said, "This talk is really good. Well done." But we just got one question that says, "Any other good application for Numba other than scientific purposes?"
So, yeah, so one of the major applications that I told you, so you can directly compile codes for CUDA kernels. So that is one major advantage. You can write CUDA codes still in you can still use Python and write CUDA codes very easily, targeted towards CUDA. And scientific computing, image processing. So if I can just share a screen, uh, there is a project which is Blurash number. So what it does is basically it takes an image, it converts, encodes it, and then decodes it. So a lot of this image processing and stuff can also be done using Numba, and it gives you a lot of performance. So yeah, you can use it into a plethora of activities basically in data pipelines. For example, if you are doing computation using scikit-learn, and now you need to calculate the goodness of clustering. For example, you perform clustering, and now you need to use some metric which is not implemented in scikit-learn to calculate the goodness of basically your clusters. Then you can write your own Python codes, and using ngit, even on large data sets, you can is seamlessly run your codes in very less time using Numbajit. Yeah. So it can be used in data pipelines, in data analytics, in scientific computing, in image processing. So a lot of activities wherever you use some in financial sector and doing financial simulations, you can use Numbajit. So a lot of applications are there, but yeah, definitely you need some computational bottleneck to in order to use Number. Yeah. Otherwise, you're good with Python
Okay.
and pure NumPy.
There's another question that what is the largest gain of speed you have gotten with this method?
I've also basically it depends. I have got around it easily gives me around 30x performance gain, and at times it also gives me around 100 to 200x performance gain. So it depends on a lot of factor, and if I'm using the parallel flag or not. So single CPU definitely performance will not be that good. It will be ranging till 100x, but if you go parallel, you can easily get above 100x also. So yeah, uh, in this examples that I showed, we can just quickly go to that slide. So this was the performance gain that we got. We got around 30x for the Mandelbrot. And if you use parallel loops, then we got more than 100x for the same thing. So around 100x for the same thing. In heat transfer, you can see it took around 11 seconds for NumPy plus for loop, but 17 milliseconds for the stencil. So you can see there is magnitudes of performance gain that I obtained. So yeah, it depends on use cases and what kind of permutation and combination you're using with multi-cores. And if you're using CUDA and with a lot of data set, you'll get even thousands of times of performance.
Mhm. There's another one. Could this be used within Lambda serverless?
Yeah, it can be used within serverless framework. I've used it, and this Blurash Number project that I just showed, it was built for serverless project, so you can easily deploy it on serverless. Yeah, in the first function execution, it will take that overhead, which is around a few milliseconds. But after the first execution, if your function call is not has not gone cold, it will execute very fast. Yeah.
Mhm. This is the last question that I would take. That have you ever had a code using NumPy which speed was not so fast?
Uh, yeah, basically it depends actually in NumPy if you are using not each and every function of NumPy is implemented in Numba most efficiently. So you need to with time there are some functions which were not written that efficiently, but the performance gain using the parallel flag was much greater. So if you only use single core, just now you saw that how Numbajit was not giving me was a few milliseconds slower than the NumPy counterpart in the example that we just demonstrated. But if you use parallel flag and run it in parallel, you will definitely gain a lot of performance gain.
Mhm. Okay. With that, we'll wrap up the session. Thank you so much. I think it was amazing. We already have some comments in the chat saying that